What if CLAWITZER was in Gen 1 OU? I have put this video off for a while, which might sound weird to some of you, because why does this look like a Pokemon that's been requested? But if you know, you know. Let's just get straight into it. Now, the reason why I didn't want to do this Pokemon for so long is the fact that, despite having Crab Hammer, with base 59 speed, it isn't fast enough to get an auto crit in Gen 1. But people really wanted to, see me do a video. And I know why now. And that's because the thing I didn't consider is the fact that it already has pretty high special attack, which is pretty significant because even without a crit, its Crab Hammer is doing more than Kingler. The other reason I wasn't interested is because it has Ice Beam. Its Gen 6 move pool is limited enough to where it doesn't even get Blizzard. But once again, it's very different now that I'm realizing just how powerful its Crab Hammer is. It is one of the most powerful attacks in RBY. And to be honest, a lot of the time, Crab Hammer's doing more than Ice Beam if it's hitting something super effectively. The only exception, I think, is Exeutor, since it has high special and resists Crab Hammer. But for Zapdos, Crab Hammer does more. And I guess that's all you really need. And this is just assuming, that that's all you can do. But you have Sword Stance, you have Hyper Beam. You're not going to get opportunities to use it, but it's a good thing to have. And to be honest, with its stats, for RBY standards, they're bulky enough to where you could definitely take a hit or two. And with 59 speed, it's not a guaranteed crit, but it's pretty close. Granted, I find that more annoying, because at least as I was making these replays, at least a fifth of the time, I wasn't getting the crit. But still, even when you don't get the crit, it's hitting about a little bit harder than Kingler's Crab Hammer. And while Kingler obviously has more damage once it gets Sword Stance up and Hyper Beam, I think it's safe to say that it's completely power crept and you no longer will see it in OU. Because just use CLAWITZER instead. It's a little bit bulkier on the special side, and you can get more damage in. Sure, it's not as good with Sword Stance, but at the same time, Crab Hammer is all you really need. It's enough to where it's doing decent chip on even Chansey and Starmie. Granted, those two have recovery and super effective electric moves, but still, it's not like Kingler's could do much against Starmie if it wasn't already have a Sword Stance up anyways. It's a bit of a trade-off, but I think it's 100% worth it. I know it seems like a pretty short and to the point pre-analysis, and that's because it is. There's really not a lot to say here. It's really hard, has Ice Beam exactly for the one thing that truly doesn't care about Crab Hammer, and that's it. Alright then, let's get right onto the replays. Starting off with the boy himself, we got Tauros. Thankfully, thanks to your bulk, you are hitting really, really hard. And with one attack, you almost delete Tauros. Even better, since you can actually tank a Body Slam and a Hyper Beam. That just shows that your base stats don't need to be that high in order to do well in Gen 1 OU. And for those wondering, Thunderbolt does about the same as it would against Cloyster, a 3-hit KO. So technically your best option, but given how much damage CLAWITZER will do with a crit, I really don't think it's worth it. And as you see there, even without a crit, it's doing a third. And Tauros cannot really afford to take a third from anything, really. Next up is Snorlax, and a Crab Hammer is a clean 2-hit KO. This was when I realized, oh, wait. Yeah, I guess this thing is just OU proper. Because if you do that much damage, you can make it work very easily. Chansey definitely can tank it the best, not counting some things like Exeutor. Although I'm not sure how much of this matchup relies on Thunderbolt or not. Thunderbolt almost deletes CLAWITZER, but obviously Seismic Toss would kill a lot slower, and you completely wall Mono Ice Beam. But that's so rare I don't even consider it a possibility anymore. So I don't know. I'm just gonna put this one in bad, but you can probably make an argument for could go either way if it's using Seismic Toss instead. Now for Zam, it's faster, it can hit pretty hard with Psychic, but Crab Hammer hits harder. And what's even better for CLAWITZER is that one Crab Hammer forces Zam to go for Recover, and you're able to out-damage the Recover. So as long as you don't not get the crit or miss, you can force Zam to die here. Although, it's not always going to be in your favor. Again, you don't always get the crit, you can miss. But what happens if Zam just goes for the attack immediately? The special drop doesn't matter because you are always critting, and unfortunately it's only a 3-hit KO. So Crab Hammer is probably going to kill you. But at the same time, like you saw there, you can crit yourself. And when you crit, you hit really, really hard. Cloyster's pretty interesting, because yeah, it's faster, and yeah, it resists Crab Hammer, but not only is it not doing a lot of damage in return, since both Blizzard and Clamp are resisted by CLAWITZER, but due to its little special, Crab Hammer can pretty much make up any difference or any damage that it lost while being Clamp locked. And since Cloyster's not doing a lot of damage with Clamp, it inevitably will give the CLAWITZER opportunities to fight back, which makes this an incredibly even fight, and one where, as you saw there, Cloyster probably needs to go for Explosion. Now for Exeutor, this is the only case where you're really using Ice Beam, and unfortunately for CLAWITZER, Mega Drain's been getting more and more popular, which makes it pretty awkward in this instance. Even without it, Psychic and Explosion I think would still make this a could go either way. The only thing I'll say is, thank goodness you are 59 speed. If you were slower than Exeutor, this could have been very, very different. Alright, let's keep moving, and now we're on the Gengar. Both of you 2-hit KO each other, so I guess I'll call this a could go either way. I think in the tier list I have it in bad, but I'll change that. But technically it's way more in Gengar's favor for, you know, the reason that it can crit, while CLAWITZER is using a crit in order to do half. Does want the Jolteon too. It does enough damage where I'll only put Jolteon in a bad matchup, because if the Jolteon or let's say Gengar are paralyzed, obviously CLAWITZER is like the scariest Pokemon in existence, and it can definitely kill them. Now luckily here, you have a pretty good matchup against Jinx. Jinx is gonna get a crit, and when I saw the crit, I was sure CLAWITZER was gonna die, but it didn't. So, you can tank the Psychics pretty well, and you can probably kill the Jinx. Not to mention you resist Blizzard. So yeah, I thought that was kind of surprising. This was the opposite surprising. I was not remotely surprised when I saw that. We're not even going to talk about it. Instead, let's talk about something much more interesting. Swirlbro needs to set up Amnesias, and obviously needs to turn to go for Thunder Wave. But as you can see there, Crab Hammer does a pretty good amount of damage, despite it being resisted. And Swirlbro can't use Amnesia to bulk it away, because you crit through it. So I think this leads to a pretty interesting situation. One where I guess Swirlbro is probably going to win most of the time in the long run, since all it needs is to fish for a non-crit, a miss, or full paralysis. But it's one where the Swirlbro can't really afford to, you know, get lazy, and one where you can probably set up the Swirlbro to be revenge killed afterwards. At the worst case scenario, you're probably doing a third to the Swirlbro while it's at full special, which is hard to deal with, but it's definitely possible. And Swirlbro needs max special in order to a KO. So yeah, interesting. very, very interesting. Now we have Starmie, and a lot of this definitely depends on what set you're running. But at the same time, the only way you get truly walled is with Blizzard Surf. Literally the only reason I'm not putting this in unwinnable is because, mostly just because of Sword Stance. But I think most Starmie sets can handle Clawitzer's coverage. It can probably threaten it before it, threatens to kill Starmie. So I'm leaning towards that being a pretty bad matchup, all things considered. Now, Victory Bell. You're not faster than Victory Bell, which is very unfortunate. But you know what? Ice Beam is a 2-hit KO. You can freeze, and you can crit. And Victory Bell can miss. So it's a very even fight where it can go either way. Let's keep moving on. This time we are ending, or usually we end with Zapdos. And yes, Crabhammer does more damage. But even though it does more damage, I think you're still better off going for Ice Beam. Because not only can Ice Beam do more damage with a crit, but there's also the chance to freeze. So I think fishing for both of those ends up leading to, statistically, probably a better win against Zapdos. Also the fact that Ice Beam is more accurate. Now, normally that's where I end this, but considering that this video is actually a Patreon video by Patreon supporter AJ, who really wanted to see this, we have 4 more replays we want to go over. Or technically 3.5. For these Patreon videos, I go over the standard OU Pokemon, and yes, even though Victory Bell and Slowbro failed to UU, I still think for these Patreon videos, I'm going to make them as if they never left. I think that just makes more sense, and obviously, for someone who wants to support me with the Patreon video, they probably deserve as many replays as possible, but also a reasonable amount. Like, I'm not going to, do 150, but that would be funny. But let's keep going on to it, alright? Alright. We have Gengar, which I think is, the obvious thing to go over. When comparing both of their Crabhammers, we can definitely see a huge difference in power when it comes to their special and special attack. But obviously, Gengar wouldn't go for Crabhammer, and that's why it's 3.5 replays. But even if Gengar plays more optimally, it's not much better. Gengar kind of has to go for a Sword Stance if it wants any chance of killing, but even then, the Clawitzer is free to go for Crabhammer as much as it wants, and Hyper Beam can't kill, you need chip damage. So yeah, that's unfortunate. The next one I want to go over is Lapras, which is another competition for a water type. And this is probably the Pokemon in the format that walls it the best. Granted, even with how well it walls, it's still only a 3-hit KO with Thunderbolt. In some ways that's kind of funny, but it doesn't really matter since Clawitzer has no way of really damaging Lapras. Crabhammer and Hyper Beam do about the same. And last but not least, we have Persian. Another Pokemon that you see that likes to use an auto crit. Although when compared to Slash, yeah, Crabhammer hits way harder. But also Persian has a high crit rate, it can hit with Hyper Beam if it wants. So, not the most one-sided thing in the world. Here is the tier list though, and I'll move this to quickly either way. You can maybe put this to quickly either way if you really wanted to. But overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this tier list. Are you happy, AJ, that I finally made this? Hopefully I can see more unique Pokemon being suggested. Although I will say that it did do better than I thought. And I hate to admit it, but if I realized it would have done this well, I probably would have done the video immediately. So you can take that as a win if you want. By the way, be sure to join the Discord server because we're going to be having a Pokemon tournament soon, which will be Infinite Fusion with Kanto Pokemon. All of the information will be both in the comments section as well as in the description below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.